Okay, so 1 year ago today, around this time, I uploaded my first YouTube video to this channel, and that was reacting to the 2024 NBA draft. Actually, that was not my first video, but regardless, that was the video that really got me going with content with YouTube videos. So I thought, why not? Let's keep this a tradition, and I'm gonna be reacting to the first round of the 2025 NBA draft. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna be honest. I haven't been as tapped in to this draft as I was to the 2024 NBA draft. I probably did a. I mean, I know a good amount of this first round. I probably know like 20 of the 30 names that were selected. Um, I will say though, my initial opinions of this draft class in general, I think it's definitely very top heavy. I think from the top 10 on, it's a huge drop off. I really think that the top 10 and all the lottery selections, I'd probably say like the top 15 players selected in this draft are definitely worse or are definitely better compared to the bottom half of this draft. I feel like it's a huge drop off in talent after the top five. And yeah, I honestly think, I know the 2024 draft got a lot of hate last year considering it didn't have like that big named superstar for the number one pick and any like really bona fide all stars. And I feel like it's a and I feel like this draft class is very polar opposite where we can have probably like five all stars in my opinion. I think like you can see five or six players be drafted, or more so, five or six players in this draft have all star potential. But the rest of this draft, I feel like, can be complete duds, and we can see a lot of players fizzle out in the league. I don't know. Again, I haven't really paid attention to this draft class compared to last year, but that's what I see in the small sample size I've seen out of the players. So yeah, I'm not going to ramble, but one other thing that I want to talk about again, or one other thing that I want to mention is how I view. I think I shouted him out last draft cycle when I was shouting out, or when I was doing the video. But shout out to Hoops Intellect. That's who I get all my NBA opinions for. I think he does a great job with his NBA draft coverage. So if you want to get into, or if you want to know a lot of these players and how they are and what they're going to be like going into the NBA, he is really accurate when it comes to it. I've watched him since 2021, and that was the first year I started watching him, and I feel like his videos and I feel like his opinions on NBA draft prospects, they're pretty spot on, I'm not going to lie. So I definitely would recommend people to check his channel out because he does a very good job at what he does. But enough of that. That was a pretty long intro. Let's get into the 2025 first round. The second round is going on as I'm recording this, so if there's any notable headlines or anything like that that comes up, I'll mention it. But I don't really know much about this draft, so I'm not gonna really, go in depth with the second round. Like, I don't really care about that. But anyways, first overall pick, the Mavericks select Cooper Flagg. I'm not going to go too in depth with this because I feel like everyone knows how good Cooper Flagg is. For me, though, in my opinion, I think he's higher than the consensus he has right now. I really think that he should be in the same. I mean, obviously, a lot of people are saying that he is going to be a generational talent. He is going to be a generational talent. Let's just set that straight. But I think he should be in the same conversation as guys like Victor Wembanyama were. And I feel like that is very lofty expectations, but I think Cooper Flagg has it all. One comparison, I do like to play the comparison game when it comes to the NBA, when it comes to NBA picks, and I see Kawhi Leonard in Cooper Flagg's game, but I definitely think he's a much better three-point shooter compared to Kawhi when he came out. I know that's it's definitely not the best comparison considering Kawhi Leonard. Obviously, we never expected Kawhi Leonard to be the player he was going into the 2011 draft. But regardless, Cooper Flagg, it's just watching his highlights at Duke, not only just watching his highlights, but just watching him at Duke. His ability to play on both sides of the court, his athleticism is just off the charts. Like, he can just drive down the baseline, not even drive down the baseline, but drive down the key and just slam it on a guy's face. Pause a little bit. And then he has great hands. His 3-point shot's incredible. He's a great playmaker. He's just an overall just great on every single level of basketball and on every single aspect of basketball. And I think he's perfect. He's just the Mavericks are so lucky considering what happened with the Luka Doncic trade. A lot of people are saying that it's that the lottery was rigged, and I honestly believe that as well. I've been procrastinating this, but I want to make a video on why I believe that this year's lottery was rigged. Not on the aspect of what people believe, having the NBA forcing a trade, the Luka Doncic trade to the Lakers and them rewarding them. I more so believe I'm going to kind of spoil, I guess, that video if I end up making it. But I believe that the Mavericks owners want to relocate the Mavericks to Las Vegas, and a huge plan for that was to give away Luka Doncic in a trade. It just so happened to be the Lakers, which was the coincidence out of all of this. And I think the NBA purposely gave the Mavericks the first overall pick to keep the Mavericks in Dallas because of that. So that's my speculation, but honestly, I might make a full in-depth video about that, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. But yeah, Cooper Flagg to the Mavericks. This is perfect. This is awesome. I think he's going to immediately be a game changer for this team, and I think the Mavericks are back into playoff contention. As crazy as this sounds, their defense is going to be incredible, especially in the front court. And yeah, this is just a great pick. So yeah, I kind of talked more than I should have on this, but whatever, it is what it is. Yeah, Cooper Flagg, he's amazing. Number 2, the San Antonio Spurs select the number 2 player in this draft, Dylan Harper. Again, I think I agree with the consensus again. I think that he is the second best player in this draft, and I definitely think he will be an all-star eventually. His ability to play with the basketball, that's his main calling card. I like his ability to drive to the rim. He's great in the pick and roll. He's great, obviously, as a playmaker, getting guys open. Again, kind of going to the pick and roll. He can, dish it out to the corner. Things like that. I don't necessarily think that the fit right now is going to work in Harper's favor. Getting guys like De'Aaron Fox, who is the other point guard that they have? Not Trey Jones. Although, is he on this team? I'm not too sure. But I think he got traded in that De'Aaron Fox trade. But regardless, having De'Aaron Fox, having Stephon Castle, 2 guys that are more so playmakers, or more so guards. I know Stephon Castle, he's kind of guard/wing. But regardless, all 3 of these guys kind of struggle with their shot makings. I think Dylan Harper has the potential to be a better 3-point shooter, but his consistencies when he was in college, it wasn't the best. But regardless, I think regardless of the fit and everything like that, Dylan Harper was the pick here, and it's going to work out. It's just, I think that they got to figure things out with this team. Again, they're very young. They're still rebuilding. But I know a lot of people are thinking that this team is going to contend as soon as next year, but they're still a young team, and I think they're just going to go through a lot of trial and error right now, and yeah, just developing their young players, because again, this is a very young team, despite having the most coveted talent in all of basketball since LeBron James on their team. I think that this is a great pick for them, and it's going to work out. It's just, it might not work out as well as people think in the earlier years. So give it some time, and I think this will be a great selection. At number 3, the 76ers drafted VJ Edgecombe out of Baylor. I like VJ Edgecombe. I really am high on him. I think he's the number 3 player in this draft. I think he's better than Ace Bailey. I know a lot of people I guess Ace Bailey did slide a little bit. I'll talk about him later, but regardless, VJ Edgecombe to the 76ers, I think it makes a lot of sense. You get kind of another scorer. You get, again, I believe he's the number 3 player in this draft. extremely versatile. He can play off the ball. He can do well in a self-creation role. He's great at getting to the basket. He's a great cutter. He has elite athleticism, and that also translates on the defensive side of the ball. I just think he's one of the most talented players in this draft and definitely has all-star potential up there. So it totally makes sense for the 76ers to take the swing on this guy and, get the talent where they selected it. I know that they were kind of floating the idea of trading this pick, and I think it was more so just seeing how valuable the number 3 pick was before they ended up selecting VJ Edgecombe. So yeah, I'm not going to really harp on this too much. I think VJ Edgecombe is very talented. I think he's going to help out this team instantly. I know that they are kind of in this turmoil right now. Joel Embiid had an injured season last year again, and Paul George had a terrible year in his first year in Philadelphia. But I think this is a great landing spot for VJ Edgecombe. And they just get another scorer to work with. And learning from Paul George, who I believe they do have pretty similar skill sets, it's going to work out in Edgecombe's favor. So yeah, I really like this pick. I really like this pick for the 76ers. Moving on to pick 4. Kon Kneppel got selected by the Charlotte Hornets at pick 4. Again, another pick that I really like. I especially like this because of the fit. I think Kneppel is going to fit extremely well between LaMelo Ball and, why am I blanking on the name? And Brandon Miller. Sorry, it took so long for me to figure out who his name was, but I do think that he's a great connector piece. I know a lot of people are saying that this isn't that they're starting 5 right now, assuming that Kneppel is going to be in the starting lineup, which I believe he will be, that their defense isn't going to be great, and I can definitely agree with that. But at the same time, this offense is going to flow extremely better. It definitely alleviates the pressure LaMelo Ball has as a playmaker. Again, Kneppel will be the connector piece in this. He's great at shooting the ball. He can work off ball. He can work on ball as a playmaker. Again, I think just sliding him in at the 2 it's perfect for them. It makes so much sense. So I really like this pick. I think that the front court or the back court for the Hornets is great right now, assuming that LaMelo Ball stays on this team. And yeah, I think this is a great selection by the Hornets, and I think they had an amazing draft overall. So yeah, I like the Hornets selecting Kneppel at 4. And now I think the biggest topic that came out of the draft, in my opinion, was Ace Bailey being drafted by the Utah Jazz. Going into this draft, there were reports, and there were it wasn't necessarily reports, but it's confirmed that Ace Bailey wanted to be selected by either the Wizards, Pelicans, and Nets. I think he's the first player to ever say that in the history of basketball. So it's kind of funny, but it seemed like Ace Bailey, it was clear that he didn't want to be drafted by the 76ers. He didn't want to be drafted by the Hornets and clearly the Utah Jazz, but Danny Ainge didn't care and he ended up selecting Ace Bailey. So it's going to be interesting what that's going to be like, but if I'm the Jazz, I think that I would still take this swing regardless of Bailey's interest in going to Utah. He is the best player on the board at this point, and for a Utah Jazz team that's kind of just irrelevant, I'm not going to lie. That's going to sound harsh, but they are truly irrelevant. Their best scoring option is Lauri Markkanen, who, let's be honest, he's probably a third option on a championship team if we're being realistic. Overall, this team needs scoring, and Ace Bailey is just the definition of a walking bucket. Like, this dude, he can just score on all floors. He has pretty good athleticism. His shooting upside is there. He has great length. I believe he can play the 3 and the 4. I think he'd be better off playing the 3, but again, his playmaking is not really there in my opinion. His defense he has potential on the defensive end, but I think it is more so just him being such a big, or him being such a highly used player. Yeah, that's kind of my opinion on Ace Bailey. And yeah, I think the Jazz needs that. The Jazz need that. They need to find some sort of franchise player. So if they can convince Ace Bailey to stay on their team, I think this can work out in their favor. But if not, I know that the Utah Jazz was looking to get a big player. One of the names being floated around was Jaylen Brown, which as a Celtic fan, I hope to God that doesn't happen. But regardless, even if Ace Bailey doesn't end up wanting to play for the Jazz, they can definitely flip him. They can definitely get him for more talent. And I think this is better off. I think it's better off that they got Ace Bailey and they have him in their possession rather than, trading down, getting a future first round pick or, stuff like that. I think getting Ace Bailey in trade talks rather than having the number 5 pick is going to be more coveted. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think, let me rephrase it. Ace Bailey being on the trade block is better than the number 5 pick in this draft being on the trade block. Again, I hope that makes sense, but again, if Ace Bailey doesn't decide he wants to play for the Utah Jazz, I think the Jazz can still flip him and get some sort of value back. But obviously, if you're selecting in the top 5, you want the player you drafted to play on your team. So we'll see what happens, but I like the pick. I like the swing regardless of what Bailey wanted, and who knows what's going to happen. It's going to be very interesting in the next couple of days. At pick 6, the Washington Wizards select Trey Johnson. Obviously, they expected Ace Bailey to slide to them. I think that's what they wanted. I assume that they wanted to trade up. I'm not sure. I think there were reports that the Wizards wanted to trade up with the Hornets because obviously I think that they knew that the Jazz wanted to pick Ace Bailey. But the Hornets didn't want Con Kneppel to slide. They were afraid that Con Kneppel was going to be selected in that before the second pick or before the 6th pick. And the Wizards ended up selecting Trey Johnson, which I think is fine. I think, again, after the top 5 is it's the first big drop off in this draft class. That doesn't mean that Trey Johnson is a bad player. I don't think that he is as good of a... Again, I don't really know Trey Johnson as much as I know the top 5 guys. Of the top 10 players in this draft, he's probably the least known of these guys. But regardless, Trey Johnson is a great scorer. I think he's a great shooter. I think he's probably the most polished shooter out of the top 10 besides maybe Cooper Flagg and Ace Bailey and VJ Edgecombe. He's up there though. But regardless, I think the main issue with Trey Johnson is his athleticism. But in a game like the NBA, you can get away with that. But at the same time, I don't know. There's a lot to work on with Trey Johnson, but his offensive upside, his ability to play with the ball, his ability to play off the ball, it can definitely work out. And I think his ceiling as a player is like this high upside starter where he can be kind of like this third option or this high volume bench piece. I feel like for the Wizards, I feel like it can definitely help them out for right now. And I'm fine with this pick at number 6. I think this is a great landing spot for Trey Johnson. And I think this is great, this is a great match for both teams. And who knows what's going to happen? We'll see. But yeah, I like Trey Johnson going to 6. Going on to the Pelicans at number 7. Their first pick in the first round was Jeremiah Fears. Point guard / shooting guard. I want to say he's more like a combo guard out of Oklahoma. I do like Jeremiah Fears. I definitely think that he's more so a niche player. And the thing is, with a guy like Jeremiah Fears, I'd say his comparison, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a perfect one, but he's in the archetype of a De'Aaron Fox, where he's this slashing point guard who needs the ball in his hand. He's great at getting to the rim. He's, a very fast player. I'd say he has playmaking upside. I don't think he's necessarily perfect, but he plays at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and I think the talent is definitely there. He's one of the most talented players in the draft, which is why he's a top 10 pick. I just think that if you're going to select a player of Fear's skill set, you either want him to be a big option going on, or you want him to be more so as a bench piece early on. And Jeremiah Fears, he's one of the younger players on the draft. I believe he is a true freshman. I definitely do like the Pelicans taking a swing on that talent because, again, if Fears works out in the league, I definitely do believe he has the upside to be an all-star caliber player. However, I just don't know what the fit is going to be like with the Pelicans. They're kind of just in a weird position just overall. They just made the trade for Jordan Poole. So they just acquired a guy with a somewhat similar skill set to Jeremiah Fears. Obviously, Poole is a better shooter, but they're both ball dominant guards. And I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of talking myself into this, but I don't know. It's kind of weird because I feel like if you want to score, it's a huge drop off after Fears. So I definitely think taking the swing on Fears makes a lot of sense. So I'm not going to lie, I'm talking myself into this. So yeah, I like the pick, but definitely the fit with the Pelicans and just everything that they're going on with. I'm obviously going to talk about their other pick later on, but yeah, it's definitely an interesting fit, but I definitely like Fears as a prospect. So he gets my stamp of approval. So I guess I like this pick, but again, I'm not too sure what's going to go on. The Nets at number 8, their first of 5 first-round picks in the draft. This is probably the biggest surprise this is probably the first big surprise out of the draft so far. The Nets took a very interesting approach considering they used all 5 first-round picks. So literally a sixth of the first round of this draft belongs to the Brooklyn Nets, which is definitely interesting, but considering the lack of first round picks this team has had over the years, ever since the Celtics trade for Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce, they've had a lack of they've had a lack of young talent on this team. So I guess it makes a little bit of sense to have 5 picks, but the players that they selected, I don't know. It's definitely a question mark. I'll start off with Ager. I'm butchering on this name, but Ager Durman out of BYU. I would say for me personally, I'm higher on Demon, or is it Demon? Sorry, why did I butcher that name? But Ager Demon out of BYU. I'm definitely higher than him. I'm definitely higher on him compared to the consensus. I think, considering the upside he has, and maybe it's just me just falling in love in the archetype of a taller point guard, Demon is a 6'8". I want to say I'd say more so like a playmaking wing, where his biggest skill set is working with the ball. My comparison to him is a little bit, it's not definitely perfect, but I think he definitely reminds me of Josh Giddey, and he kind of has that similar vibe to Giddey when Giddey came out of the 2021 draft, where he's this guy who, again, he's great with the ball in his hands. He's a great playmaker. However, he's not that great of an athlete. He's not that great of a ball handler. He's not that great of a shooter. So going into the 2021 draft, a lot of people were wondering, like, what is the potential of Giddey then? Like, if he can't do all these things, then why is he worthy of being selected in the top 6? And again, it kind of has that similar feel of Demon, to me at least. I definitely think Giddey is Giddey coming into the draft was a lot more fluid as a player, whereas, how do I describe it? I feel like he had a lot more fluidity. I feel like he was a better ball handler. I think he was a better slasher, in my opinion. Like, his layup package and, ball handling, just getting to the basket is a lot better than Demon. I feel like Demon is a lot more, how do I put it? He's a lot more stiff. So, yeah, that's kind of just my opinion on him. But I feel like, considering where the Nets are, where the only young talent on this team, unless I'm blanking, or I guess the only young pieces on this team are Cam Thomas, Cam Johnson, who I'd assume that they'd finally trade, and unless did they trade? No, he's still on that team. And Nick Claxton. They kind of need, this young talent, and they have players, but they don't have. I feel like they're worthy of taking a swing, and I feel like they definitely took a lot of swings in this draft. And Dedmon was one of them. Again, I feel like he can work out and he can be, this taller point forward, but his shooting needs to be polished. His playmaking needs to be polished, and he's just not that great of an athlete. So it's definitely an interesting pick, but I'm on board with it more than I'm not on board with it. So I'm fine with it. As for the Raptors at number 9, they drafted Colin Murray Boyles out of South Carolina. I'm a huge fan of his game. I think he's one of the best defensive players in this draft. He's a bigger bodied wing. Has some sort of shooting upside. He's definitely not perfect. Especially at the 3 ball, he needs to really work on that. But at the mid range, he's solid, but I'm not going to really talk about his offensive game because his defensive game is the reason why he was drafted this high. He's great in the off ball, or he's great on the on ball. He's also great as an off ball player. He kind of plays like this free safety role where he reads the play on the top of the key and can, make these plays and make these great reads. And I'm a little confused with this selection by the Raptors, though, and it seems like Murray Boyles wasn't really intrigued to go to the Raptors, as he kind of just said damn when he got selected, which is pretty funny and a pretty bad look for the Raptors and him. That's definitely awkward, but regardless, the Raptors have a lot of wings on their team already. They have, obviously, Brandon Ingram. They have RJ Barrett. They also have, I guess, Grady Dick, but I consider him more like a shooting guard. But they have a lot of wings to deal with. However, as I'm talking about this roster already, I feel like they're a lot more offensive minded. So bringing a guy like Colin Murray Boyles, who is a bigger bodied, I think he plays more like a 4 compared to a 3. And he does have athleticism. He does have, I'd consider, how do I put it? He definitely has more, what do I want to say? He has mobility for a guy of his build. So yeah, I definitely can buy myself into that being, I guess, like this high usage, or this. I guess it does make sense to select Murray Boyles in the top 10 and get this defensive-minded wing, considering they have, again, guys like Ingram, guys like Barrett. But I definitely can see him not working out in the NBA. I can kind of see him being like this tweener type of guy. To me, he kind of reminds me a little bit of Julius Randle. I'm not saying that's the perfect comparison, and I definitely think that Julius Randle and Murray Boyles have different skill sets and approaches to the game. I only think that I'd compare him to him is because he's a lefty and he kind of has the same build as Randle. Another kind of player that I would say is similar would be like a guy like Derek Williams, where he's a bigger bodied. He can play the 4, he can play the 3. He didn't start out as a great shooter, but I mean, he played 15 years in the league. He was a very consistent player, despite him being picked number 2, but that's a different story. And yeah, I think the biggest swing factor for a guy like him is his shooting. So it's going to sound like a broken record throughout this video, but yeah, if Murray Boyles perfects his shooting, I think this can be a great pick. Now moving on to number 10, the Rockets selected, not the Rockets, the Phoenix Suns as part of the Kevin Durant trade. They selected Kemon Maluch out of Duke, center. Now that the Kevin Durant trade, I haven't given my opinion on the Kevin Durant trade, which I probably will in a video eventually. I'm holding on to that. But I think now that Maluch is on the Phoenix Suns, I'm liking the Kevin Durant trade a lot more for the Suns. Obviously, we all know that the Suns need a center. And they got not only Maluch, but they also got Mark Williams from the Charlotte Hornets. They are very similar players. They also both went to Duke, which is pretty funny. I think Maluch, he's not going to be, a crazy center where he's pretty much your prototypical modern day athletic shot blocking center where he's great on the defensive end. Again, he's a great shot blocker. He's a great mover. I'd consider him kind of like a Derek Lively where he can use his speed for a guy like his size. He's great with his footwork. He's great with his speed. He's great as a lob threat. He's great in the pick and roll. Things like that. I feel like he's going to be a very solid. He's going to be a very solid starting center in this league. And I think he's still a little bit raw at the moment. And I'm bought into this selection a lot more with the Mark Williams deal. I think that's a great trade for the Suns, considering they're selling low on a guy like Mark Williams. Obviously, we knew that the Hornets were interested in trading him, considering they pretty much traded him to the Lakers. And it kind of sucks for the Hornets, considering the cat was out of the bag with this trade, and they obviously needed to trade him due to his health and everything like that. So I think for the Suns, it makes sense to take on the swing, and I'd assume that he'll be their starting center for right now. So if he plays well, and depending on where the Suns are in their season, they can either trade him during the trade deadline, or they can keep him as a long-term piece for the time being. And meanwhile, Maluch can be on the bench and develop and get a lot less minutes to start his career, which I think will help him out a lot. So yeah, I definitely like this pick finishing up the top 10. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The Memphis Grizzlies traded up for Cedric Howard. Again, I don't really know too much about Howard, but I feel like he fits in with the Memphis Grizzlies. It seems like he's very interested in him, and I feel like Howard has been rising a lot more. Howard's definitely interesting because he was a D3 guy to start, moved to Eastern Washington, spent like 2 years there, then went to Washington State, played like 6 games. He did play well in those 6 games, but he had a shoulder injury, I believe, which sidelined him for the rest of the season. And then he also committed to Duke, so he would have played his 5th year at Duke if he didn't declare for the draft. So it's definitely an interesting approach that he had, but I mean, it worked out. He was a lottery pick out of anything. So I don't know. Again, I don't really know much about Howard. He's a wing, 6'5". I feel like he's great with his athleticism. Like, he has shooting upside. I think that's a big part of his game. I don't know. I feel like this is another pick by the Grizzlies to add to their rotation into, things like that. So I feel like this selection can work out, and yeah, I think that this can work out. I just don't know much about him. Yeah, I'm gonna start to be quicker on these. I'm gonna be a lot quicker now with a lot of these players, considering I didn't go too much in depth with this draft, but regardless. At number 12, the Bulls selected Noah Essenge out of, I believe he plays on a German team right now. I think his biggest skill set is his defense. Definitely needs some potential, or definitely needs some help on the defensive, or definitely needs some polishing on his offensive game. Yeah, again, I think the Bulls are just taking a swing here, and yeah, I don't really know. I'm not really the biggest fan based on what I've seen and what I feel like he can be. If he works out, I feel like it's a huge swing, and considering the Bulls are selecting that at number 12, maybe it can work out, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not really a big fan of it, considering they just took Matas Buzelis in last year's draft, and I feel like they have pretty similar skill sets. So yeah, I'm not too sure about how I feel about this, but who knows what's gonna happen. I don't really know. I feel like he's gonna be a player next year that, or I feel like a year from now, I feel like when we talk about the 2026 draft, and just kind of just review next year's season and talk about the Bulls, I feel like we're not gonna really hear much about Essenge. I could totally be wrong, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not really too high on this, in my opinion, but yeah, that's just kind of my thoughts. And then the most surprising trade up, or I guess the biggest trade up that happened, was the New Orleans Pelicans going back up in the draft and selecting Derek Queen out of Maryland. However, the biggest, I guess, storyline out of this trade up was what they gave up, which was 2026 unprotected pick, and it's the best one between the Milwaukee Bucks and the Pelicans. So it's a huge risk for the Pelicans, taking a chance on Derek Queen. Now, I'll be honest, I'm definitely not as high on Queen as I am compared to a lot of people. I think a lot of people kind of had lesser opinions on Queen going into the draft, because at one point, like I'd say like a month ago, Queen was projected to be more so in the top 10, but now he's on the back half of the lottery. And that definitely doesn't mean that I don't like Derek Queen. I think I like his skill set as a player. He's definitely one of the most exciting and unique skill sets in this draft class. And if he works out, I'm happy to be wrong with this, because I do like Derek Queen. I want him to succeed because, again, he's a very exciting player. However, his archetype, I'm not a big fan of. I will admit, and I was wrong about this when this happened in 2021. I did not like Alperen Sengun, and it's for similar reasons to Derek Queen. I just didn't like him defensively. I thought he was a little short. I thought he wasn't going to succeed on the defensive end. I didn't like his ability. I didn't think that he was going to be able to shoot the ball. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of centers who can, play make and like back to the basket centers who have that little finesse to their game. Their biggest thing is their ability to get to the basket, things like that. I'm not too high on it, but I feel like with the Pelicans, it could work out. I feel like him and Yves Missi, I might be butchering that name, but I feel like they can make a great 1-2 punch for the front court. I like their front court now, especially adding in Zion Williamson. This could definitely be exciting. Like this, for the Pelicans, they definitely need to add on to their bench. I feel like they have a lot of guys, but they definitely don't have a lot of roles. And Derek Queen is going to be their sixth man, in my opinion. At least, maybe. We'll see what happens depending on the end of the year. But I feel like with Derek Queen, I feel like his calling card can be a guy like Naz Reid, where he's this six-man offensive microwave scorer. Also like a guy like Montrezl Harrell, kind of in that similar skill set, which I did compare Derek Queen to. Honestly, my comparison to him, and considering where he was selected, it's probably a more positive compared to where he was selected, but I feel like he reminds me of DeMarcus Cousins and Naz Reid, but again, that's kind of just shades. I don't think he's directly compared to him, but regardless, yeah, I feel like with Queen, again, his issue is his defense. I don't think he's a great defender right now. If you can polish that up, I feel a lot more comfortable with him. But again, and also another weakness of him is his shooting. He definitely has upside there, and he can definitely work on it. But he's definitely not perfect out there. He's definitely not like Naz Reid. But again, Naz Reid wasn't like this coming out of the draft. So who knows what can happen. But what excites me about Derek Queen, again, is his ability in the paint. He's definitely more of a finesse player, but he can also play with a little bit of size. He definitely is undersized, but he makes up for it with his mobility, with his dribbling and everything like that. He's also a solid playmaker as a center / power forward. So I feel like this, again, it can work out. And for the selection for the Pelicans, I think this is great. And for the San Antonio Spurs to cap off the lottery, which I think I'm just going to stick to the lottery now. San Antonio Spurs drafted Carter Bryant out of Arizona. I think this is another amazing pick by the San Antonio Spurs. I'm a huge fan of Carter Bryant. I think he's going to be the perfect role player in the modern day NBA. When I think of Carter Bryant, I think he's just the perfect prototypical 3-and-D prospect. He definitely needs to work a little bit on his three-point shot. I know I've said that a million times in this, but he definitely needs to. But I really like his ability on the defensive end of the ball. He is a very energetic defensive player. He's great on the on ball. He'll get up in your face. He's an incredible athlete. He'll get a lot of steals. I just like it. He's a very exciting player to watch for a defensive minded player. Along with that, he's great at slashing. He's great at cutting. He's a lob threat. So just having that Swiss Army knife on your bench for the San Antonio Spurs down the line when this team eventually makes the playoffs, he is going to be an incredible name. Considering with where the NBA is going, when you look at the NBA Finals, this year between the Pacers and Thunder, both teams had incredibly deep benches, and with a guy like Carter Bryant, you need that now if you're going to win championships. Like, that's just how the NBA is going right now. So, yeah, I love the Carter Bryant selection. I think he's just going to be a very high-end role player. Obviously, I think he'll eventually become like a starter-level player, in my opinion. But as of right now, he'll be in a very effective bench piece. I feel like he's going to complement Victor Wembanyama and Ron Harper very well. So, yeah, I love this. And I know I was going to talk about the rest of the first-round draft picks in this video, but this video is already taking forever. I've been talking way too much than I should be. So I'll be talking about picks outside of the lottery that I liked in another video, but I think I'm just going to talk about the lottery because that's what I know about. That's why I know the most. And yeah, that's kind of all I have. Overall, I'd say, again, I like a lot of these picks compared to me not liking a lot of these picks. And yeah, the more I see this on paper, the more I like this lottery. But again, I feel like with this draft class, it's definitely very top heavy. And as the draft picks go on, this draft gets thinner and thinner. So yeah, I mean, I really like this. Obviously, I think right now I'll talk about that later, but I'll talk about winners and losers in another video. But yeah, that's my opinion on the lottery. I'll talk about my favorite picks outside of the lottery in another video. And yeah, hopefully you watch all, I don't know, we'll see. But yeah, that's all I got.